Well, hi everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Cioffi on this Friday evening as we see the bitter cold air. The first air mass beginning to move out, a second bitter cold air mass getting ready to move in, and in between all that, we do have a little bit of snow to deal with, and there are some advisories and even a few winter storm warnings that are showing up here and there. So we're going to get to those in just a second. I just want to touch on the fact, as I was reading, for this particular time frame, this is the coldest that we've seen here in the eastern U.S. in 70 years. That's a rather daunting and incredible statistic, and it's even colder by 2 degrees Fahrenheit for the period of January of 76 into 77, which for many areas in the east and northeast stands as one of the coldest, if not the coldest, January on record. So we are taking out some pretty impressive numbers here with regards to the history of this, and we have a ways to go. There's cold air in the weather pattern. There's going to be another frigid blast at the end of next week that, and for some areas, may wind up being the coldest of the three. And I'm thinking that depending on one thing or another, we might see below zero readings before this is all said and done in places like New York City, Boston, Philadelphia. I would not be at all surprised. This is, I think, for next Friday into Saturday. I think that is when that might occur. We may get close in some places on Monday morning, just north of New York City, just north and west of Philadelphia. I think we could certainly see temperatures below zero, and everywhere else probably in the low to mid single digits. Now, as far as snow is concerned, this event that we're seeing right now may wind up being the only event of consequence over the next 7 days or so outside of lake effect, because unless there's some big surprise in the upper air pattern, we have this jet stream. This northern Arctic jet is so dominant and so overwhelming that we continue to have no real room for anything other than these minor systems going by, and the Pacific Ocean for a moisture source remains closed. The Gulf of Mexico for a moisture source remains closed, and the Atlantic remains also closed. So let's look at what's happening this evening. First off, we're going to take a look at some of the advisories that have been posted so far. We'll probably see some of these added on. They'll probably be adding to these advisories at some point, but when we take a look here, we've got actually one winter weather advisory up for my neck of the woods, and it happens to be in my county, Suffolk County, because there might be a little bit more snow out of this for Suffolk County than for everybody else, but we're not really talking about a big deal here. We also have some winter weather advisories up for parts of western Pennsylvania, and you can see they swing around into northern West Virginia, much of the southern half of Ohio, much of the northern, let's say, 2/3 of Indiana, into southwestern Michigan, up into northern Illinois, including Chicago, and then a little peppering of winter storm warnings up for northwestern Illinois and southeastern Iowa, and we also see those advisories continue from there. We also have some winter storm warnings up tonight for areas along the shores of Lake Superior due to some lake effect on the upper peninsula of Michigan. And then winter storm warnings up for a good chunk of Montana, northern Idaho, and northeastern Washington. I've got the isobars here. The next big high is coming down out of Canada. You can see it here. And you're getting upslope east winds all up through the northern Rockies, and that is triggering off some heavy snows in that area at the moment. So all pretty interesting stuff here. And I'm going to, let's see if we can get the temperatures up so we can take, I was trying to get the temperatures up on this a little while ago, and I was having a little bit of a tough time, so I'm going to try again. Let's see if I can get this to work. I'm going to turn, I got to just do a little bit of maneuvering here, but I hope you guys have all found creative yet safe ways to to stay warm because it's been tough. I'm gonna, you know what? I'll put up the radar first. Let me get rid of these hazards. We'll get rid of the watches and warnings, and we'll take that off. And maybe now I can put the temperatures on. All right, let's try. Keep your fingers crossed that I can do this. I got to tell you, I've been burning firewood almost night and day, and it has been a lot of fun. Thank God I actually chopped up a ton of firewood back when we had with Hurricane Sandy. I chopped up and stacked about 12 cords of firewood, and I'm finally down to the last couple of cords. All right, so here are the temperatures right now. Single digits, even still some below zero readings in northernmost New York State and northernmost New England, but we are seeing temperatures coming above water a little bit in southern New England. We actually did break the 20-degree mark today in the New York, New Jersey area. Now, the moderating temperatures, of course, triggering off some snows, and you can see on the radar here the darker greens probably where we're seeing some of the steadier snows that are falling, with lighter snows as you go to the north. Temperatures mostly in the teens there. Up as we head up toward Minnesota and Wisconsin. Remember, these are 5 p.m. temperatures there, so they're just past sunset, and they're already running down to 15 degrees below zero up in parts of northwestern Minnesota. Minus 10, minus 11, minus 13 is some pretty impressive numbers here for this time of day into South Dakota. So that's that next air mass coming down, and you'll notice the cold temperatures up east of this, you know, to this warm front that's lining the stationary front, actually, that's running up the Rockies. So you're in the single digits and below zero on the east side of the mountains, and you're in the 40s on the other side. And in fact, look at Colorado, very warm across much of Colorado in the 40s and 50s. Same for Utah. So west of the Continental Divide here, we're looking at very, very warm temperatures with that ridge in the western part of the U.S. and also very, very dry. Here's the radar activity right along that frontal boundary with the darker greens, probably indicative of some heavy snows, especially in parts of northeastern Washington and northern Idaho. So a very, very active scene here on the current weather map that we're looking at. So what do we expect for snow, at least for my area? So we'll put that up. And this is the Weather Service forecast. I kind of want to be a little conservative on this and probably favor more the low end than the high end. So we're talking about, you know, the Weather Service has got 3 to 4 inches for easternmost Long Island and 2 to 3 inches across much of Suffolk County, an inch or two Nassau, back to about New York City, southern Connecticut, up toward Route 84. Again, I think maybe closer to the inch than the 2 inches. You know, one of the tougher things about this forecast is the fact that the snow ratios are going to be on the order of about 18 to 1 or so. So if somebody winds up with a 1/10 of an inch of liquid or 1/1500ths of an inch of liquid, that could easily be 2 to 3 inches for somebody. But models just in general don't look to be all that impressive to me at this point. And here's the Jersey forecast of from Mount Holly. General 1 to 2 inches throughout much of eastern Pennsylvania and through much of New Jersey, except the extreme northwest and the extreme southeast. So a modest slow snow event. One of the things about putting this little bit of snow cover down is that it may make a difference as far as the temperatures are concerned. It might make them a couple of degrees colder than they otherwise would be. So if we put down, say, 2 inches or so in most places, and assuming the snow doesn't get blown away on Sunday by the wind, that might make the difference for somebody getting down to, say, 5 above to possibly getting down to near zero. Now, I just want to show you these teleconnections that we've been showing you over the last couple of weeks. Remember, the Eastern Pacific Oscillation is the one that's the most important with regards to cold, and that's negative. The Pacific North America Index is actually positive and strongly positive when we get to January 2nd and 3rd. This is probably indicative of a storm that's going to form well out to the east. This is the storm that the weather models were developing near the coast a few days ago, and the European had its big, fantastic run that everybody was talking about yesterday, and that is not going to happen. And I'm going to bring up the GFS, and the reason why that, one of the big errors, I've talked a lot about trying to recognize the model trends, because if you recognize model trends, you are going to be able to figure out weather patterns, and they kind of repeat. And I think that's what we're seeing here. Weather models have been trying to move the chess pieces around and weakening that northern Arctic jet, and it just has not happened. That has been the case. It's done it a couple of times in the last few weeks, and it's doing it again. And I'm going to try and illustrate this here. Looking at the tight U.S. Jet stream level at 18,000 feet, what we call the 500 millibar map, and where you see the darker blues and those tight lines together, that basically shows you where the strongest winds in the upper atmosphere are. And you've got this almost a ruler of a jet stream this evening running from west central Canada to the mid-Atlantic coast. That is like a straight line, very fast jet, very flat. There's no there's no room. There's just simply no room. Everything is moving northwest to southeast. It's moving at a rapid rate. There's no moisture inflow. You don't have any upper level winds coming in off the Gulf of Mexico bringing moisture. You don't have any upper level winds, supportive of bringing moisture in from the Atlantic. Even the Pacific is cut off from weather systems coming into the Pacific because of that ridge in the west. So you have about as bone dry a pattern as you could have in the United States, with all the moisture sources virtually closed off. So you just work with what you work with, and I think just the fact that the air is so bitterly cold that it's pretty much squeezing out every bit of moisture that it can get its hands on. Now this energy is going to move to the east, and again moves very quickly. You'll notice that the curvature here is kind of like a bowl. You like to see, if you want to have something going on, you want to see the winds diverge some more from one side to the other and get into sort of a V shape on that trough, and you don't really have that. So that's why we think that this system is just going to be weak and move right along. And another weaker trough will come in, probably with some clouds and maybe some snow showers in a few places as we go in through Sunday and Monday with the lake effect. And Monday morning is going to be brutally cold, no question. But keep an eye on just north of Lake Superior. You're going to see a trough that's going to drop down and around. And you'll also notice in Georgia down into the eastern Gulf of Mexico, there's another shortwave trough. And here lies the problem. The European and some of the other models over the course of earlier this week trying to phase this, and phase it pretty far to the west. In a couple of the runs, the phasing was pretty far to the west. But in reality, that northern jet is so dominant, and this southern system is just moving along at such a fast pace that that northern trough doesn't catch it until it's virtually right on the east coast. In fact, it doesn't really phase until it's just to the west of the coastline. So you can't get any development out of this. The trough then gradually just starts to lift up and out, and the core of the next cold blast comes right in for Friday night and Saturday. You can see it right here in the darker blue. That's the representation of the upper air trough that's swinging through the eastern states. This is a really, really cold shot here for later next week. So 2 more shots of frigid air to go before this is all said and done. And I'll back it up just a little bit. When we've got this unphased look here, as you see it on the map, this is Wednesday morning. We'll go back to Wednesday evening and now into Thursday. At this point, the southern stream system is way out in the Atlantic, closer to Bermuda than it is to North Carolina, and that's where your surface low is going to wind up going. Instead of moving up the coast, which is where models were taking it, you can see it here on the edge of the picture, a low that's sitting north of Bermuda. And by the way, I'm going to switch regions here I'm going to jump over to southeastern Canada because some of the earlier model runs eventually wind up with that low becoming an absolute animal. And there it is, going just to the east of Nova Scotia, but heading right for Newfoundland. That's a 951 low, a millibar low, off the wall barometer reading there that runs right on through for later next Thursday and Friday. So if you're in the Canadian Maritimes, if you're in Nova Scotia, it might pass just far enough to the east to spare you any big problems, but you folks watching from Newfoundland might want to pay attention to this. This could be a big snow producer in the western part of the island, heavy rains to the east, and a lot of wind with this. So we're gonna pay extra attention to the possibility of something happening here later next week. The only chance for the eastern part of the United States with this storm would be if the trough were somehow sharper and further left, but it really would go against the overall upper air pattern that we've been seeing through all of this. And you'll notice too, as we go into Friday, later next week, the weather across much of the country, except for maybe easternmost Maine and the Pacific Northwest, remains bone dry. That's been pretty much the story here for so long. It's, it used to be, I can remember periods where it was very unusual to have even one day where there wasn't much weather going on. That there should have been, should be a storm going on at least somewhere. But the pattern is just unusually quiet and unusually dry because of the fact that you've got this Arctic jet so dominant a force. Here's the first system on the GFS surface map for tomorrow, late afternoon and evening. You're also going to wake up the lake effect machine, as I said. And by the way, the lake effect probably will be more south of Lake Ontario rather than east, and south of Lake Erie with all of this, south and east for both areas. And here's for Monday now. So this is where by Monday, the core of the cold air will be in here. So we're going to be advecting cold air here all day Sunday, Sunday night into Monday afternoon. So Monday morning is going to be especially brutal. I think Tuesday morning is going to be especially brutal. And then maybe a brief moderation Wednesday. Here's a low that's east of Florida Wednesday morning that winds up going toward Bermuda. And now we're setting up, as that storm intensifies into a major storm, once it goes near Nova Scotia, you start to get another shot of cold advection and another big high coming down and another shot of brutal air. And this time I think the core of that, the very core of that cold air is going to be coming into the northeast. So this is where I think we might have a chance to see a number of places, including the major cities, Philadelphia, New York City, Boston, possibly going below zero at the end of next week. Now, the big question in the long range will be what happens after that. Well, let me just bring up the upper air here, because one of the things that I often fall back on, if you were here yesterday, I kind of said it a couple of times, so I'm sorry if I'm being repetitive, but remember that the trend is your friend. And the GFS has actually behaved quite well in this whole pattern, in that it has really shown that this northern jet is just not going to get out of the way that easily. And in fact, as we go into days 9 and 10 in the long range, this is now January 8th and 9th, we do have another rather deep trough trying to swing into the eastern states. And then after that, it looks like the Arctic jet does relax, but I would just caution everybody that even though the Arctic jet relaxes, I don't know that it's going to get that, we certainly would see temperatures moderate. It's hard for me to imagine that we could continue this unrelenting cold air. We could still wind up being below normal, but maybe closer to average as we move toward, the middle of the month. But I would just caution everyone that the models have been kind of indicating this for a while now on model runs, where it keeps showing a change, late in the period, and every day it's, it seems like it's one day later. I don't think this pattern flow that you see here is especially warm. And the other takeaway I would suggest is that if that Arctic jet can just relax a little bit, it doesn't have to completely disappear. You actually don't want it, if you're a snow lover, you don't want it to completely disappear. You want it to relax enough so that you get some cold air, but it doesn't overwhelm. And at the same time, you can open up, perhaps the southern part of the jet stream can open up a little bit and start bringing in some systems in from the west, and then moving them across perhaps the Gulf states, or something that tries to come across the top in the Rockies and drops down into the lower Mississippi Valley. There's more room for things to happen this way, as opposed to the kind of pattern that we're in at the moment. I want to pull up Europe, because our folks across the pond, with all the cold that we're having here, I've been kind of leaving you out lately, so I want to make it up to you. Okay, so here we have what would be the current weather map for tonight, with some rain across parts of England. Looks like we're getting some snow as we move in through the Alps and in through Germany, but it's not really all that cold in Europe at the moment, because of the fact that it's so cold here in the eastern United States. You know, you guys usually wind up having the opposite kind of weather on your side, which makes sense. And we've got the usual array of Atlantic storms moving in, but for the most part, especially for you folks in England and Ireland, it looks like your snow chances are going to be fairly minimal here, as long as we have that Arctic jet the way it is in the eastern part of the United States. You know, there looks like here at this point, when we get to later next week, the winds look to turn in from the north, so you're getting some of the Arctic air coming down, the northerly winds off the North Sea. This is for later next late Thursday and to Friday of next week, and then that just seems like it's a quick shot, because then the Atlantic comes alive again. Although it seems like when we get into days 11 and 12, you know, there's another, there might be a flow of colder air here coming down from Greenland. So your weather, at least from a standpoint of wintertime weather in Europe, seems to have you know, calmed down ever so slightly. So let me bring myself up to the front. I will go through you guys on the chat board. I saw somebody hit super chat, and I really thank you for that. Just give me 1 second here. And let's see, that was Chris Eddy and She Gadget. Thank you. I haven't seen you in a while, She Gadget. Good to see you here, and thank you. Happy New Year to you. Really appreciate it very much. I saw also someone, was it Adam? Did you say that you think what the record-breaking cold, once that breaks, then we're going to go transition over to record-breaking snow? One thing at a time, okay? Please. Let's do one thing at a time here with regards to excuse me, changing things up in the weather pattern. And if you think back, you know, I did say a few times that you know, there's nothing in the rule book that says we can't go from cold, you know, that just because you have all this cold doesn't mean the snow necessarily comes with it. There's no law that says you can't have cold and dry conditions, and that's apparently what we have at the moment. And Sean K., thank you very much also. Let me just give you a thank you. Lots of hot chocolate for me. And let's see. Kevin Francis, a very fine kind of dry snowfall in Vermont. Not fluffy or wet at all. Maybe it was lake effect off Champlain. It's been near or below zero all day. Yeah, and you got more cold air coming this whole week. You know, this is a big ski weekend, and skiers are, you know, from the standpoint of snow, that they got plenty of up in ski country. But you know, you're also going to have to be, you're going to be skiing in some pretty wicked wind chills. Raymond, you got to put it away for a while with the severe weather, okay? You got to give it a break. We can't even get a shower to pop up in the Gulf states, let alone a severe thunderstorm. Christina Padia, welcome. When do I think the snow will start tomorrow morning in central Long Island? Let's say probably around 10 or 11 a.m., and then it'll probably be done by 5 or 6 p.m., maybe an inch or two. I don't think it's going to be a big deal. James Hines, how does a storm produce rain in traditionally cold climate despite moving to the south of that region? All right, I'm sorry, James. I'm trying to picture your question here. How does a storm produce rain in a traditionally cold climate despite moving to the south of that region? Okay, it could be because of the fact that the way the upper jet is set up, that the air, the cold polar air that you would need, is displaced well to the north. There is relatively colder air north of the storm track, but it's not cold enough to produce snow. I'm thinking that's where we're going with this. You can certainly have storm tracks. For example, in the east, you could have a storm that goes by, let's say across North Carolina and offshore. But if you don't have some kind of polar connection, even a weak polar connection, you may wind up only having, say, Pacific modified air across the Northeast, like in an El Nino year, and then you wind up with rain, even though the storm tracks to the south. I hope that's where you were going with the question, and I gave you the answer that goes with it. If not, just reword your question, and I'll try it again. Super Syed. Latest updates on the significant snow chances in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, Washington, D.C., Baltimore areas. Through the way I'm seeing it through next week, close to zero, except for whatever happens tomorrow in the areas from Pennsylvania, New Jersey, maybe northern Delaware, northern Maryland, on up into southern New England and southern areas of New York State. That's a modest event anyway. The chances of a snowstorm over the next week or so are zero or near zero. And in fact, if you check out on my website, I did put up a post today explaining why that is the case and why the European model yesterday, which made a big snowstorm along the East Coast, is probably going to be very wrong. Ryan Ford, did the Euro model have trouble with storm systems last winter? I don't recall. But I got to tell you, there are periods where the models, some models work and some don't. Right now, it seems like the European is having a very difficult time with the long range, and that the GFS seems to be having a much easier time with the long range. How long does that last? I don't know. But the GFS to me seems to be leading, doing a lot of the leading here, and when it makes a change, because the GFS was the first to yesterday to lean away from that coastal storm idea, and it took the European about a run to catch up. So it seems like the GFS right now is doing a better job in the long range. Short range is a whole nother matter. The GFS has not been doing a good job in the short range, and the European has been doing a better job in the short range. Okay, let's see. More winter weather advisories just posted. I hope they didn't just add a bunch. The Weather Service around me has this habit of putting up advisories basically one county at a time. Okay, I see they did add some winter weather advisories across southern Pennsylvania, except the southeast. So this would be areas like Harrisburg, Lancaster, Gettysburg, back to Johnstown. Altoona's not in it. Du Bois is. Bradford is. State College, Williamsport is not. So that's some of the newer winter weather advisories up. And I think I got them all so far. And I don't see any other major changes with regards to that. So that's a good thing. Joseph Nurek, the fact that all models do not agree should tell you something about models. Well, it also, yes, and it should also, illustrate to everyone, this is why you can't look at something at one particular moment in time on a literal model run in the long range and get worked up over it, because of the fact that there's so much going on. You need, now if you recognized the fact that over the last couple of weeks, the dominance of the northern Arctic jet, it would have led you to look at that model run yesterday, that very bullish model run of the European with a big storm off the Jersey coast. You would have looked at that and said, this doesn't look right. Okay, it's going to be very difficult for this to happen unless the upper air pattern changes in a big way. And the reality is that that northern Arctic jet is just, until proven otherwise, you go with it. And that's probably the prudent way in terms of the forecast. So it certainly says we are going to be bitter here into next weekend. So at the very least, we've got another 9 days of this stuff to chew through, 9 to 10 days before we get into any kind of moderation. And I again will also reiterate that if the Arctic jet relaxes enough, it could open up the doors for some weather systems to move on through. But we'll have to see in what form that takes place. You want the pattern to relax and break down a bit. You don't want it to completely change, because if you're a snow lover, because you want that cold flow from Canada, at least some semblance of cold air coming in. But this is one of those instances when you say it's, the saying of it being too cold to snow, it's really more a reflection of the upper air pattern rather than the surface pattern. You could have snow, and I've seen snow down in the single digits. Winter 13, 14, 14, 15 here. We had every single snowstorm we had, temperatures were in the teens, and in some cases down around 10. So it's not the ground temperature that's important as much as it is when we say that say that it's too cold to snow. It's the condition aloft that the Arctic jet is too dominant is what that really means, and that suppresses everything to the south. You're too deep into the cold air is what it actually means. Cold pattern, which could end with warm and rain, and you've never see a flake or an ice pellet, James Hannon. That can happen. Don't be shocked if that winds up happening, that you're this bitter cold for a long time, and then finally, when you get a weather system to come along, if you don't have just a little bit of blocking to kind of hold that cold air in, you could wind up with the whole, the cold air completely moving out at the bottom layers of the atmosphere, and by the time the moisture arrives, except for inland areas, it warms up and rains. Wouldn't be the first time it happened. It would have happened, and it certainly will not be the last. Super Syed, where would you go for a bachelor's degree? Where would you go from there pursuing a career? Well, your choices depend, I think, on whether where you see yourself in the future. Do you see yourself in media? Do you see yourself in communications? In which case, you might want to look at a school like Linden State College, which is meteorology and communications, and they kind of weave them together. So you basically not only get the meteorology, but you get some television training, some media training as well. If you're more theoretical, there are other schools like Stony Brook University, for example. A number of the SUNY schools in New York offer meteorology. Oswego, Oneonta, good schools. Of course, there are the traditional heavyweights, Penn State, Florida State, and so on. Your choices are there. I think it depends on what you really want to do. If you're, are you going to be government forecast? You would think maybe you want to do weather service. Are you going to go into research? So you kind of want to line it up from there. You can shoot me an email when you're serious. If you would like me to, give you a little bit more information on that, we can, talk about it a bit more. You could also reach me through Facebook if you'd like. I'd be more than happy to try to help you out there. Garo Vestas is late on the chat, but not too late because I'm still here. Let's see. How good do you have to be at math and physics to be in meteorology? William F. Well, you got to have, you got to be good in math and good in physics and understanding the concepts. Okay, if math is a strong weakness that you might have some difficulty overcoming, then it could be a challenge. But I don't want to discourage anybody from trying. If you think that you can do it, if this is what you really want to do with your career and with your life, do it. Okay, you only go around once in this world, and you want to go around. You want to go around happy. Okay, and if I've always said I've been very fortunate in my career that this is what I've always wanted to do. And I am very lucky because if you can work at what you love, it's never you'll never work a day in your life. And I think there's a lot of truth to that statement. You're always going to deal with workplace BS and the nonsense that goes with that. That's everywhere and in every job. But if at the core of what you're doing is something you love, then it's something you should pursue, and you will be very happy for it. I have absolutely no regrets with regards to how things have turned out for me overall. I'm in a very happy place right now. It may have taken me a long time to get here on YouTube and on Facebook and in a few other places, but it has been quite the ride, and I'm in a very happy place. Super Syed, career-wise for me, well, I started in Corpus Christi, Texas, was my first TV job, and then I went to New Orleans, WVUE TV there. Then I went to News 12 Long Island from 1986, the original startup channel of cable news, local cable news, and I was one of the originals there. I left in '96 and I worked at WPIX TV in New York for the next 11 plus years. Then I went to WNBC for a year, and then took a bit of a, let's call it a forced sabbatical, because of the fact that when the economy collapsed in 2008 and weather and television stations were firing people left and right, I could not get a job. So in television, so I had to went to work in the federal government for about 6 years. Let's call it, I worked in their accounting division, and then I found that my yearning to do what I love was just too overwhelming. I got myself back into television. I'm working at Fios One News, which is part of Verizon network, and I also still work at WPIX TV from time to time. I'll be there Sunday, New Year's Eve. So if you are in the New York area, or if you're even online or on their Facebook page, you can see my weather there. See my weather. I'll be working Sunday night. Linden State College is in northern Vermont, in Lyndonville, Vermont, way up. If you are a snow lover and cold weather lover, you want to go there, okay? Because those are the you'll be going to school with temperatures at 20 to 30 below zero, depending on the pattern. She Gadget, thank you again, by the way. I appreciate it. Always been fascinated analyzing weather data, but went into web development. Have a head for data, so maybe later in life. Never too late. If you've got a head for data, weather's a good place for you. And you know what? As a web developer, you can, get your hands on trying to develop more efficient and better websites, which is awesome. If that's what your, if that's where your specialty is. But yeah, you can always go back. There's nothing that says that, the decisions that you make when you're in your early 20s are not necessarily decisions that you have to live with for the rest of your life. Once upon a time, whatever career you decided when you went to school is what you did. That was when I was growing up, and but the days of being married to one job or one career are over with for the most part. When you look at the demographics and what has gone on, it's not unusual for people to change careers several times over the course of their work lifetime, and or even more. There's no rule anymore that says you can only do one thing. So don't ever give up. And don't ever let anyone else talk you out of what it is you want to do. I saw too many people over the years wanting to do this, but their parents talked them out of it. Someone else talked them out of it. If it's in your heart to do this, you can do it. If you want to make money, that's really not that difficult a thing. You can focus your mind on making money. Anybody can make money. And if you want to make a lot of money, you can make a lot of money no matter what industry you choose to do it in. But you want to be happy. The money will come. Okay, if that's the consideration. If you get the work, the money will come. Yes, Christopher Alley, I am, and I'm happy. I made the choices I made. Okay, let's see. You would not, Todd Adams. What are you not calling brutal? I'm just kind of curious. I had 2 days of bitter cold, which isn't saying much. So I guess it depends on where you are. So Tom, you must be in a place where the air is a little bit more common. Okay, I'm just trying to scroll back. I'm not seeing the connection to the thread, but I'll figure it out. All right, folks, we're coming up on 20 minutes before the hour, so I've got some stuff to do as I get ready for some more TV time. And in the meantime, check out my, I'll put the link up to my website posts about, what happened yesterday with the European model and why I don't think we're going to see anything regarding major storm activity over the coming week or so. This will explain it pretty well. So you can check out the link I just put up there. And thank you so much, those of you who hit Super Chat today. Chris Eddy, thank you. She Gadget, thank you very much. And Sean K, thank you so much for hitting Super Chat. All right, so here's this. Tomorrow I'm going to have as it turns out now, tomorrow I'm going to have a slightly different schedule to deal with because I'm going to be actually working. So that might afford me an opportunity to do my live stream a bit early. And depending on weather conditions, or I may just wait till tomorrow evening. But I'll tell you what, I will schedule it on my YouTube channel. I'll put the time up so that you can check out. And this way, if I do wind up doing it tomorrow evening, you won't miss it. Or if I wind up doing it earlier, you won't miss it. Anthony, okay, I'm going to try this. Pensu? Please forgive me if I got that wrong. Love your show. Please provide some feedback on Tropical Tidbits website. Do you know where they get their data? NCEP, from the National Climactic guys, and how often they update. Anthony, he updates. Levi Cowan runs that website, which is just nothing short of brilliant in my view. It's updated continuously, okay, and very fast. He get those models as soon as they come out. He's got them up there, and I strongly recommend. We use his maps all the time. He's been very generous about that, and I really appreciate it very much. And you should also check out his YouTube channel, although he does not put up videos too often. During hurricane season, he's a bit more active because that's more his specialty. But the Tropical Tidbits is the go-to in my view. Why don't I ever show European surface maps? Excuse me, Mago Minecraft. They're not available publicly. Some are. I do show them from time to time, but they're only available. The European, we have only a limited amount of European data available that's available publicly and for free, and they are in 24-hour increments. And I have, but I do show them from time to time, especially when they're relevant. I'm trying to get. I did have another site, weather.us, who has constructed a very good site with regards to their European products, and I did get permission to share those, but I have some logistics to work out, and then I think they're having some site issues, or at least it looks as if, because I wasn't able to access the models yesterday or today from there. But if I can get access without getting having any type of issues regarding using them, I will try to bring more of them on. And I hope, by the way, those of you who were here yesterday, I had my colleague Joe and good friend Joe Rayo on with me, so we did the show together. So I'm going to try to do that from time to time over the next coming weeks, particularly when we get into storm situations. Okay, Happy New Year if I don't see you over the weekend, but we'll be on both Saturday and Sunday. Sunday I might do it early in the day because I also have to work on Sunday, and I'm working Monday, so there's no rest for me until late next week. So have a great Friday evening in the meantime. We'll see you over the weekend. Travel safely. If you're going to New Year's parties, be prudent and common sense, and don't do silly things now, okay? Because I want to keep everybody here, all right? And Delvin, I'll work on trying to get Joe Rayo on a regular basis. So we got to juggle a few things, but it's not an impossible task. All right, folks, we'll see you tomorrow.